So, welcome to the next in our online series of messages brought to you by the Friends at Center Congregational Church in Lynnfield, Massachusetts. This is Reverend Tom Bentley, the pastor. Jesus reveals a shocking truth in the Sermon on the Mount. He tells us that people who look like they're losing are often the ones closest to God. They're the ones winning in the deepest, most powerful way. We hope that this message can help you in your journey of life. If you'd like to know more about Center Congregational Church, this will be a little bit of information for you at the end of this video. So thanks for spending time with us.
So grace and peace to you from our friend Jesus. I don't know about you, but I feel that our current circumstances in our country have really begun to undermine my personal sense of well-being. I feel like I and the rest of the world are losing ground. Things are in decline. The hymn, Abide With Me, comes to my mind. Change and decay all around I see. O thou who changest not, abide with me. That's my prayer. And then there's an increasing despair and anger that's coming over me as I feel helpless. I need the help of Jesus. But this anger, this bitterness, this cynicism all throw me deeper into that pit of despair. So the lectionary leads us to what we call the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. And it speaks to me today in a way that perhaps it hasn't before. Let's take a look at it. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Jesus is talking about somehow this being a loser is winning somehow. So let's take a look at what does the world call winning? How do you win in the world? Well, you win with money. You have status. You have control. You have applause, yes, comfort, strength. And what does the world call losing? Well, rejection, weakness, grief, poverty, humiliation, persecution. Well, lo and behold, Jesus opens his most famous sermon by announcing that the very people the world calls losers are actually blessed. Blessed. What does he mean by that? It comes from a Greek word, makarios, and this blessed, but it also can be translated as happy. But the term signifies a deep inward state of spiritual contentment, joy, and divine favor that is not dependent on external circumstances. It is often understood as a supremely blessed or fortunate state. So the Beatitudes are not a bunch of little simple, nice sayings. They are Jesus's definition of success. And importantly, Jesus addresses his listeners really all through this message in the plural. He says, "Blessed are they," or "Blessed are those." He's talking to people as a group. He never says, blessed is the one, or blessed is this man, or blessed is this woman, or this person, or blessed is this rock star. No. Rather, he says, blessed are they, the bunch of losers, the group. And that implies there's a sacred community made up of those suffering losers. So it begins, blessed are the poor in spirit. Poor in spirit. I guess he's speaking about the spiritually bankrupt, you know, and you're aware of that need. And I've been feeling like that. And the world says, be self-sufficient. Jesus says, neediness is the doorway to this kingdom I'm announcing. Losing strips away our pride. That's how we enter a deeper relationship with the divine. We don't enter that relationship to God with a haughty pride. And losing takes that pride away. In the verse that follows, Jesus says, blessed are those who mourn. Now, mourning includes loss and grief and brokenness, of course, loss of someone we love, but it's a disappointment wrapped up in what can often be a sin that we grieve over, our stupidity, our sinfulness, what we've done wrong. And the world says, well, hide that pain. But Jesus says, bring that pain to God, and comfort will find you. You know, sometimes true comfort can only come to those who've been crushed. Blessed are the meek, Jesus says. Well, meek, we don't use that word too often. But meek is not the same as weak. Meek equals our strength surrendered to God. We have power in our own right, but when we give that to God, then something is transformative that happens, such as nonviolent protest. You know, that can be dismissed as meek and foolish, but it holds the ultimate power. As people all over the world have learned, the oppressed people of the world have learned that to respond to violent oppression with more violence just really makes it a bloodbath and accomplishes nothing. But the power of non-violent surrender invites the oppressor even to grapple with the difficulty of being a human being. Jesus rewards surrender. You know, surrender is letting go of control, and this is sometimes how God takes control. I love in the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step that one word is often you see in a bumper sticker. It says powerless. Powerless. It's an invitation to give up that old self with all of the old games, the false self, and enter into a new relationship with, AA says, your higher power. God's power is higher, and it invites surrendering to God to let go of the struggle, which then is a possibility of healing. And then blessed are the thirsty, but this isn't about food or drink. Yeah, we can be satiated with food and with water if we're thirsty, but what about spiritual hunger? How can that be satiated? Well, if you feel empty, it doesn't throw you out of, you're not disqualified. You're positioned now. You can receive grace because there's room for it in your spiritual hunger. Recently, I had a dream where it was a difficult dream. There's some sort of conflicts, and suddenly I found myself flying. That happens once in a while. Maybe it's happened to you. And I was flying high, but this was an amazing dream of flying. I was in a joyful state of ecstasy as I tumbled in an acrobatic way, like I was swimming through an invisible sea that buoyed up my weight to a point of weightlessness. I was lifted up, and I woke up believing and understanding suddenly that this was that vicarious, that joy, that inner peace that was a gift in the time of struggle. Blessed are the persecuted. Yeah. The world says avoid rejection. Don't be stupid. Now, reject. Jesus says rejection for righteousness means you're invited into the divine state of grace, Makarios. Now, here, the grace that's promised is a communal grace. No person resisting injustice is ever alone, really. The person always stands with countless others who do the same resistance. Nelson Mandela, perhaps you know his story. He was 27 years in prisons in South Africa, and often he was in solitary confinement, but he was never alone. He actually led the movement that brought freedom and release to those who were under apartheid in that country, because he walked with God in his struggle. So sometimes losing on earth is the only way to become a citizen of heaven, God's grace. You know, I can still see some of those medieval illustrations of a great circle of blessed ones who fly beyond the bonds of earth's sorrows and become embraced by the infinite love of the Creator God. That's the invitation. So when we lose, room is made for God's power. The Sermon on the Mount goes on. It's worth reading. He begins to speak to the people directly. He says, you're the salt of the earth. You're the light. You know, salt works, but it has to be crushed first. Light shines, but it needs darkness to shine. So much of the historic sacrifice in history has come from those who experienced the deepest pain. So many people. So Jesus didn't just preach the Sermon on the Mount. He lived it. He became poor. He mourned. He was meek. He was persecuted. He was rejected. He lost in the eyes of the world. But the cross, even though it looked like losing, was actually the greatest victory in history. If Jesus went through surrender, then your surrender is not the end, it's the beginning. If you feel helpless or unable to deal with what's happening in your own personal life or the world about you or both, these struggles are relieved when you give your struggle to God. In our current history and moment, these struggles to help so many vulnerable people who are being hurt, the struggles to save our collapsing democracy, surrendering to God to lift you up will not leave you in despair. Through the holy community God offers comes the blessing that lift you up to the joy, the blessing promised through the love of Jesus. In his name, amen.
So thanks again for spending time with us. If you'd like to know more about Center Congregational Church, you can go online at center-church.org. And of course, we'd always love to hear from you. You can call us at the phone number provided or contact us through the email address. So peace and best wishes. Goodbye.